When I need answers about anything to do with personal growth, I go straight to my mom and my aunt. Here they are, Priscilla Babin and Tina Gilliatt with the sister sauce.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Gilliatt, and this is my sister, Priscilla Babin, and we are excited to start the Sister Sauce podcast. So, welcome to our first episode.
Hello.
We are new at this, but we figured you can't learn if you don't ever try anything, right? So, bear with us. It will get better, I promise. But for the first one, we are excited to share some things with you. And we figured we'd start every episode with hot sauce. It's sort of a hot topic of the week or something. Priscilla called it a bee in her bonnet. But Priscilla has some hot sauce she wants to share with you.
So lately, the thing that I would call hot sauce that's been the bee in my bonnet, or what's been in my thoughts a lot the last week or so, is targeted marketing and the algorithm and things like that. You know, how the internet reads our minds.
Mm-hmm. You mean like when you and I were talking about the difference between a duvet and a bedspread, and I suddenly got an email from Wayfair about duvets that were on sale?
Yeah, it used to make sense. It used to be, well, I searched for end tables, and now I'm getting on Wayfair, let's say, for example. We're not sponsored by Wayfair, just like but so say I go on Wayfair and I look for end tables, and the next day I get 16 emails about end tables.
Yeah, for sure.
That makes sense, right? But when you're out to brunch with your sister and she says the word duvet and then she gets an email, you start to wonder what is going on, And, everybody's seen the meme, right, about how, when back in the olden days, we used to be afraid of wiretaps, and you don't get in cars with strangers. And nowadays we buy wiretaps and put them in our homes on purpose and give them cute names. And we call up a stranger to come park in front of our house.
No, you can't say the word because she'll respond to you right now.
Yeah, I can't say it. No. And you can't even, you don't even have to say hey first to some of them.
Oh, but wait, the latest iOS update, you don't have to say, hey, I hear.
I'm not going to say her name.
No,
They'll all start fighting with each other.
You all know who she is. It either starts with an A or an S, depending on which girlfriend you like.
And her arch enemy that starts with an A. It's over there. Won't say her name either. But it's there's the question of it is, how do they get us? Are they listening all the time? Because we can't even say their names because they'll say, what do you want? But it's not just that, because how do they know we're saying their names? They have to be listening all the time, right? I mean, you can really screw with your mind, Oh, we have a guest. Was not expecting to have this guest. She was sleeping. Hello.
Guest on the podcast today. Priscilla's cat has just arrived on the scene.
She might become a regular. Who knows? Yeah. But but then the question is, do we want them to get us? Do we want them to get us? Because the point of targeted marketing is so that we see the stuff that we're interested in, right? It's supposed to be a convenience, but I don't know how much I want them listening to me all the time when I'm at lunch with my sister, when I'm talking to my kids in the car, whatever,
It's true. It's true. And I'm a technology person. And so logically, AJ got all upset because he was listening to or searching for something on his computer. And then I opened my email and I had an email advertising that thing. And I said, no, this is logical because everybody in the house is logged into my Google Chrome. because it's my Microsoft on the computer and I logged in and we all share OneDrive. So when we log in, we're all logged into the same Google Chrome. And it's why I have to tell my daughter not to say anything rude on the internet because she might be saying it as me. But it's true.
Really?
He got all upset. And I'm like, no, that's logical. I get that. I don't get why I mentioned the duvet cover to Priscilla at Chateau Coffee House. And suddenly I got a bajillion emails about
That's creepy.
covers. It is
That's
creepy.
really creepy. I mean,
I
you
guess
you scrolling through Facebook and stuff starts popping up. I have never researched thyroid eye disease, not once,
Oh,
because I know all I need to from you. But my Facebook is full of ads for Tepezza and
oh
lawsuits
my.
related to thyroid eye disease and
That's
whatever.
interesting. And I work, I'm a tutor, and so I work with students. And a lot of times my students will ask me about something. Or for example, one of my students goes to Grand Canyon University, and my Facebook is filled with ads for Grand Canyon University. Why? Because occasionally I will search for a template that he needs that he can't find in his student portal. And it is very likely that it's out there somewhere on the internet. But it's crazy.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the takeaway from that?
I think it's good to be knowledgeable about, who is Big Brother listening and know what we can do to maintain our privacy. But it's also impossible to know exactly, who's listening and when.
You just have
And
to be careful about what you
be
talk
careful
about.
what you say out loud, I guess, is the takeaway. I did find one statistic. There was some research done by Statista Research Department, and it was from May of 2019, and it was a survey, and they asked people, it was just a random survey of people about how they felt about targeted marketing. 27% of people were of the opinion that targeted advertisements were a convenient way for them to see products that they were interested in. So they liked it. But it was only 27%. But 51% thought that kind of advertising was inappropriate and it got too personal. And the remainder of people were undecided. So it seems like at least half of the people who were surveyed said, no, it's weird and it's gross. Stop.
Okay, people. So if you want to have a private conversation, put your phone in another room or your computer or Alexa or Siri, whatever you're doing. My phone's going to start talking to me now. That's pretty cool. Well, that was an interesting hot topic, some interesting hot sauce. Didn't burn my tongue too much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you for sharing that.
So if you are new to us and you have not heard us speaking before, we're two sisters. We are 12 years apart in age. We're both a little older. I won't give our exact ages. We're not spring chickens. We're both wives and mothers, or have been wives. I'm a widow. My sister is a wife, and we are bestest of friends. And we have spent a lot of time together in the last few years doing some social media stuff. And we were previously known as the Sensei Sisters. And we had a lot of fun with that, doing videos for Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And we talked about a lot of different topics, just like we plan to do with our podcast.
Yes. Yeah. So when we were the Sensei Sisters, and I still think we are, we're just using a different outlet now. But when we were doing the Sensei Sisters, post. We were posting weekly to Facebook, just a live video, 3 to 5 minutes. Sometimes it got longer, but we would share things that were current to us or things that were going on. And we would challenge people to grow in the 5 areas of personal growth. And those 5 areas are, of course, the psychological growth, the social growth, physical, as far as health. What else? What am I missing? Spiritual and intellectual. Yeah. And we called them the 5 H's. So we had our 5 H's, which were head, heart, health, harmony, and holiness. Mm-hmm. And so we would share different tips on those things. And I'll backtrack a little bit and say the way we got started was in 2018, my son passed away. And it was a very difficult time for me. Losing a child, as you can imagine, is really difficult. But I'm a strong person, as is Priscilla. And right about that time, her husband, Ken, had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's. And he was young at the time. And so Priscilla and I were both struggling. We were going through a very difficult time. And my husband caught us one Sunday, huddled away in the game room at my mom's house, and we were both crying. And yeah, we cry a lot. Yeah. But anyway, my husband said, you know, what's wrong is that you guys never get the time to talk with just you and your sister. You end up with the kids around all the time and you don't get to talk. And it's a shame you have to go hide in the game room at your mom's house to get a moment to yourself. So we started meeting for breakfast every week. And then our thing was, hey, look, if we're going to meet for breakfast, how can we help other people in the process? And it's interesting because that's just the way our families, or the females in our family, I guess I should say, that's the way our brains work. Our mom was a teacher. Priscilla taught Zumba for years. I am a trainer and a coach and a tutor. So I'm used to teaching people, and it's just the way our brains work. And so we're really excited about doing the podcast. Priscilla already mentioned that her husband, Ken, did pass away last year. So we took a break from our podcast, or from our Sensei Sisters, because toward the end of Ken's illness, we had brought our husbands into our breakfast so that we could all be together. And that was an enjoyable time for us to share in some couple time.
Yeah, and, but it made it a very difficult thing to record.
Yeah, it did make it hard to record. So we stopped doing our Facebook moments, and then Ken passed away in September
last year.
Of last year. And so it's been about a year, and Priscilla and I both have been talking about doing this podcast, so we're excited. And as we've already mentioned, it's new to us and we're learning, and we promise it'll get better as time goes on. But we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe and keep up with it and let us know what you want to hear about.
We'd love feedback.
Amen. Now we get to the portion of the show where we talk about our main topic, or our meat sauce. And we decided that since October is Breast Cancer Awareness Week, I can't say that 3 times fast, that we will talk about breast cancer awareness. And so I guess, give a disclaimer in that neither Priscilla nor I have ever had breast cancer. We have had mammograms, right, Priscilla? We do our screenings, but the closest I ever came was that I had a scare with a lump that ended up being benign. So I went through the whole biopsy and all that stuff. And I was sharing my story a little bit with Priscilla the other day because it was when she lived out of state. And so she wasn't here firsthand to see me freaking out. But it is a very scary thing. And we've had several relatives that have been through this and are going through this in some cases. And so we have been praying with them and praying for them. And it was eye-opening for me. I don't know about you, Priscilla, but researching it and learning some of the things that we learned it was really eye-opening, and the facts were really interesting and alarming in some cases. So today we're going to talk about that, and we will put links to the websites that we used and anything that we talk about that's from somebody else, another source. We will certainly share those links in our show notes, and we look forward to getting your feedback and hearing your comments on it. So Priscilla, there have been Suzanne Summers died recently, and so there have been that sort of elevated things. I was listening to a talk show the other day where they were mentioning that she had gone through breast cancer as well. But a lot of famous people, right, have had breast cancer.
Yeah, Shannon Doherty, Wanda Sykes, Sheryl Crow, Christina Applegate. Poor Christina Applegate, she's been through a lot.
Yeah,
Robin Roberts, Melissa Etheridge, Olivia Newton-John, who she passed not that long ago too, right?
right,
Losing track of days. Hoda Kotb, Julie Louise-Dreyfus, Kathy Bates, Rita Wilson, Suzanne Summers, like you said, Edie Falco, Martina Navratilova, Jacqueline Smith, Diane Carroll, excuse me, saying my cat's name, Carly Simon, and Maggie Smith. I'm very
and
fond of
I
Maggie
think
Smith.
so that was from WebMD, and there were a ton more, right? That some of the less familiar names of those were just the ones that really jumped out at us. It was just shocking. I had no idea, especially about Hoda Kotb. And AJ said that to me the other day. He said, "Didn't Hoda Kotb have breast cancer?" And I said, "I don't think so," but obviously she did. She was on that list. But the statistics are out there, and it's pretty alarming. This is a prediction for 2023 that 118.8 women out of 100,000 will have an incident with breast cancer. And the mortality rate is 19.1 people out of 100,000. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but the rates have actually decreased from what I read from years ago because people are more aware now and they're getting checked and they're doing things the correct way. But since 2005, it grows about 1% every year. And so we really need to be aware of those statistics and know when we need to get screened. And I guess it's based all about risk.
Yeah. So the next thought you might have is, who does that mean? Who is at risk, and what kind of risk do you have? Because there's a difference. Women with a family history, obviously, of breast cancer are in a higher risk group. That's just a no-brainer, right? And most that's going to be true, but a lot of women who have breast cancer don't necessarily have a family history. Statistically, only 10% of individuals diagnosed with breast cancer have a family history. So that's a little, different than what you might think. If you have a first-degree relative with breast cancer, for example, your mother or your daughter or your sister develop breast cancer below the age of 50, you should consider some form of breast imaging starting around 10 years before the age of your relative's diagnosis. So let's say your mom is 49, gets diagnosed with breast cancer. So when you're 39, you should start going and getting your mammograms. But, it can be much younger. We'll talk about that later, about age. If you have a second-degree relative with breast cancer, say you're an aunt or a grandmother, see, not in your immediate family, and they were diagnosed with breast cancer, your risk increases slightly, but it's not the same category as if it was a first-degree relative, a closer relative.
Yeah.
And then if you have multiple generations of people diagnosed with breast cancer on the same side of the family, say, grandmother, mother, sister, then if you have that situation, one relative after another like that, under the age of 50, then the probability increases that there is a breast cancer gene. And that's when you might want to go and get tested for the BRCA gene, which is a mutation that causes breast cancer. So there is a way to help you predict your risk. It doesn't predict if you will, but it predicts your risk better. You know, if you don't have the gene, obviously you're going to know your risk category is going to be a little different. And then you would take your doctor's recommendation from there as far as mammograms and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's important with any kind of cancer, is to figure out what the doctor wants. What
Right.
types of screenings anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that once you figure out your risk category and you have to get checked, there are multiple ways they can screen for breast cancer. The first, of course, is a clinical examination. So if you're a woman and you've ever been to the gynecologist, you know that they usually check your breasts. But this is also something that we should be doing on our own, self-breast exam. And if you don't know how to do it, look it up. YouTube tells you how to do everything. I don't have a link to it to put in the show notes, but I'm sure out there somewhere is a video about how to do self-breast exams. I learned at a very young age. And that is how I found the lump that ended up getting me to go get an early mammogram. This was probably 20 years ago, an early mammogram. And I have dense breast tissue, which I don't know if we have a whole lot of information about that we're going to share, but Priscilla might have some more than I do. But the thing is, if it makes it more difficult to spot cancer. And so if you have dense breast tissue, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll follow up with an ultrasound after the mammogram. And I wanted to mention mammograms now, you know, they used to only be available in 2D, but now they're available in 3D, which gives a more clear image, but it's not like the end all be all. I have every time opted for a 3D mammogram when I was able to do that. And then I've still had cases where, because of the dense tissue, I've had to go then for an ultrasound or an MRI. I've never had to do the MRI for breast scanning, but some people have, because it's that difficult. And of course, you want to be safe, so you're going to go to the extreme, right? And then if they do find something and they want to double check it, they will do a biopsy. In a lot of cases, it's a lumpectomy with a biopsy, or a core needle biopsy is what I went through. It was, I'm really good with needles, so it was not a big deal to me, but I know some people freak out about it. But believe it or not, Priscilla, AJ had a core needle biopsy that was very much like a breast cancer biopsy in his pectoral region, which is right below where the breast is, and or in that area. And he went through radiation that was exactly like the radiation that women that have breast cancer go through. Now, his was metastatic renal cell carcinoma, which is kidney cancer that spread to other parts of his body. And so he went through that. But I mention that because men can get breast cancer, and men should do self-examinations too. So we'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit more. So depending on what your risk is, you have different time frames that you need to get scanned. And so for women of average risk, first, is it 1 year after the age of 40?
Yeah, every year starting at age 40.
And of course, you're going to get the clinical exams prior to that. So the doctor just checking you for lumps. And
I know I've been getting mammograms at least every year since I was 40, and I'm not at a high risk or anything. So
right. So yeah, and a lot of people just put it off because it's scary. But I know some people are more sensitive than others, but even if you are more sensitive, and okay, we're going to go over some myths in a little bit, but y'all, just because a woman has smaller breasts doesn't mean it hurts less. Okay. Let me just get that out there. But yeah, don't put it off, because even if it's a little uncomfortable, it doesn't last long. It's quick and you're in and out of there. And it's once a year. Just do it.
Yeah, it's only a few seconds, and it's not like super painful. It's just uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know when you were younger, you were a little nervous about it before you had to go.
Yeah, and I mean, without being too graphic, the squooshing part for me is less of a big deal than the plastic shield being up in my face.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe that's just because I'm weird, but like, because if you've never seen a mammogram machine, if you've never had a mammogram, and you are bewildered by the whole thing, it looks like a big plastic box above another plastic box, and it's very square. It's not round. It does not cup you. It's not soft. It's a hard plastic
Go look
box.
on YouTube.
It's not sharp. Like it there doesn't have sharp edges on it, but it is hard and it's plastic and it's not really warm either. So they plop you around in there and they press this hard plastic against you in many directions, in several directions, not many directions. It doesn't take long at all. The lady or whoever, who is the person screening you
Technician.
will
Yeah.
manipulate your boob. You go in, they give you a little robe and you just take your blouse and your bra off. Don't wear any deodorant. They don't like that because it'll get on their equipment. So don't put any lotions or deodorants on the day you go. Um, although probably take a shower so you don't stink the poor person out. But then they will have you open your robe and just like shift it to one side and let one lady out, and then they kind of plop you in there and mash you around and get you in the right position, and they close the thing up and it will squeeze you, and it gets really in your face because they've got to get all that sweater meat into the machine. So, and they want to get it all the way as high and wide and low and in between as they can get. They want to get a good coverage, and it gets right, and so you're kind of like this, and then she'll go back to the computer and she'll hit some buttons, and then she'll say, okay, hold your breath. I didn't know I was gonna be holding my breath. I would have practiced, but so you have to hold your breath and you're like, and
Yeah.
then she'll say, okay, it's done, and then you can breathe. And then they kind of do one that's this way, and then they kind of do one that's this
Well, this
way-ish.
is an
It's
audio
like
podcast for some, so they can't see what
yeah,
you're doing with your hands, but it's different angles.
sorry. They do one top and bottom, and they do one that's kind of on an angle. And then if you have any special concerns, if you do have felt a lump, or if your doctor has any special directional concerns, they might do it a little different. And then they do the other side, and then you're done.
Yeah.
And they're really
Yeah.
nice. And then you go home, and usually within a day or two, at least I think it's within a few days, you should have some kind of result back. The mammogram screenings, the turnaround on those seems to be pretty quick compared to other testing that you might have done. So
Yeah, and since we got into that, I'll share that if usually at the end of the mammogram, they'll ask you to wait a few minutes while they check the films. And then if they need clearer images, they'll say, well, we need to do a couple of more shots. Or they may even say, let's go over to this other room and get an ultrasound, or let's schedule you for an ultrasound. All of that is frightening, but it's not out of the ordinary. So you shouldn't let it really upset you. I know the day that I went for the lump and I felt the lump and I went, they ended up doing 3 different mammograms. They kept sitting me in the waiting room, or not waiting room, but the little holding area, and having me go back in and get another mammogram. And then they sit me back in the holding area and then say, oh, Miss Gilliard, we need to do another. And it was like 3 times. And I got more and more nervous. And by the time they got me in there for the ultrasound, they called a radiologist in, and that freaked me out. And then they said they had to do the biopsy. And all of my concern was for nothing. It turned out to be nothing. So the only recommendation I can say there is don't let it freak you out. And knowledge is power. So even if it turns out to be something, take care of it, because knowledge is power. You can wipe the
Mhm.
risk out. Priscilla mentioned that exams every 3 years, the clinical exams every 3 years, starting at 20, but then mammograms every year at 40. And this
Mhm.
information is all from the Susan G. Komen website, which, if you're familiar with that organization, they've done a world of good for breast cancer patients. But you also have other categories of risk. So women at a higher risk, which Priscilla already talked about, you got to make sure you talk to your doctor. Same thing with men. If you have the breast cancer gene in your family, then you need to make sure you share that with your doctor if you know it, and make sure that you heed his or her advice. And then if you're transgender, breast screening recommendations depend on your age and what sex you were assigned at birth. So you need to make sure you talk to your doctor about that. Plus, I know that transgender people take hormones, and that can sometimes change things for you. So please do make sure you speak with your doctor about that. Now let's talk about some of the warning signs of breast cancer. I was listening to Daily Blast Live the other day. It's a talk show where they talk about all the latest news and topics. And one of the things they talked about was breast cancer. And that surprised me that so many people don't know the warning signs. They think the warning sign is a lump in your breast, and that's not always true. So what do we look for?
Um, Oddly enough, we talk a lot about, feeling yourself for lumps and things, but some of the most common warning signs are a change in the look or the feel of the breast, a change in the look or the feel of your nipple, or nipple discharge. If you've got nipple discharge and you're not a breastfeeding mother, you need to talk to your doctor.
Mhm.
There's very few situations where it would be normal for you to have anything coming out of your breast
Right, right.
outside of being a nursing mom. So it's
That being
definitely something you need to have addressed.
Yeah, that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean, if that's the case, that you have breast cancer. It just
True.
means it's a reason, it's a warning sign that something is wrong. Could be
Mhm.
something totally different. And I shared with you, Priscilla, that when I originally had the issue where I found the lump, the biopsy and all that actually ended up being the other breast, because when my doctor sent me right away for the mammogram, because she felt the lump as well, that turned out to just be torn tissue from lifting something heavy. But the the radiologist, when he looked at my mammogram, noticed a change from the previous mammogram in my other breast, and that was when he ended up doing the ultrasound and then the biopsy and everything. And I was still okay, but yeah. So torn tissue can be a thing. It can feel like
Mhm.
a lump, and had me totally freaked out. And do you know that pain is not necessarily an indicator of breast cancer? I read somewhere in our research that a lot of women who experienced no pain, or a lot of women who were diagnosed with breast cancer, said they had never had any pain. And I thought that was interesting, because the first thing I get nervous about is, oh, I feel a little pain right there. And so that's not always a good indicator of anything. So let's debunk some of the myths. So share one that you know, Priscilla, or that we've researched.
Well, one is that it's more common to have breast cancer if you have bigger breasts. So you, you can be one of the
I would be very low risk.
IBTC IBTC members. Watch out.
Ah, you read my mind. Oh, I got
Gotta
picked
check
on so
them.
much in high school.
If you don't know what it means, Google it. I'm not gonna tell you.
That's IBTC. Check it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it
What's
isn't.
another one?
Oh, so while it is a myth that women with
Oh,
large breasts tend to have breast cancer more. That is a myth. However, obesity does play a role. So
That's
if
true.
you're
That's true.
obese and that's the reason your breasts are big, be careful about that. And so another myth is that an injury can cause breast cancer, like picking up a chunky kid like mine when they were little and tearing tissue. But the injury itself, while it can draw attention to a lump that was already there, or it can cause you to go get a mammogram and then discover something totally different, like me. That's exactly what happened to me. I tore tissue. I went for a breast exam and a mammogram and all because of that torn tissue, and they found the lump in the other breast. So yeah, definitely get it checked out, but don't freak out because it's a myth. It doesn't cause you to get breast cancer.
Yeah, and like you say, an injury can cause a lump. It doesn't necessarily mean the injury is what causes cancer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember I had that fatty tissue erupted or whatever, and it was on my like by my rib cage.
Oh
And
yeah.
that was really strange.
AJ actually has that too, a ruptured cell right below his breastbone. And I was always freaked out about that, but it's been there for years. And he went to the
Yeah.
doctor and
And
said, no.
sometimes they go away. Mine went away.
Yeah.
Another thing that a lot of people think that breast cancer only affects older ladies, middle-aged and older ladies. And that is definitely not the case. I've heard of plenty of incidences where it was very young women in their sometimes even 20s. And so
Yeah.
you need to start at least doing your self breast exam and going to see your GYN
Yeah.
every year.
We've
Well, you go
had a
every year.
couple of
You go
women in
every
our
year
family.
for all the things. But they will check you at least every other year, I guess. But I think mine always did, if I remember correctly. It's
Yeah,
been a
they
long
usually
time
do
since I was
clinical
20.
exams like our researcher. They usually do the clinical exams starting at 20. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think that if you are at higher risk and then they're going to check you younger, right? But
Yeah.
I wanted to say that I lost my train of thought, but we have, oh, I know what I was going to say. We have had younger women, friends and family
Hmm.
that have gone through breast cancer at a much younger age.
Hmm.
And so we've had some personal experience with that.
Yeah.
Another myth, oh, I already kind of mentioned this one, is that breast pain is a definite sign of cancer. That's not necessarily true. In fact, one surgeon estimates that only 1% of women will be diagnosed with cancer after feeling pain. So
Hmm.
if you don't have pain, don't assume that means you're safe and you don't have to go for an exam. I guess is the
Correct.
lesson to be learned from that.
Hmm. And then some people think that if you eat too much sugar, it causes breast cancer. Eating too much sugar will make you unhealthy, but it's not 100% a cause for breast cancer. Many doctors and health experts encourage patients to reduce or limit sugar intake because it's addictive and contributes to mood swings, obesity, and illness. And we know that obesity can increase your breast cancer risk. So that's the only thing that makes that even slightly, less a myth. I'm not going to say true because it's not true. But many cancers, are it increases, from just general poor health, I guess, would increase any kind of cancer risk, but it's not the cause. And then sugar, a lot of people think that sugar makes tumors grow faster, and that's not necessarily true either, which is one that I always believed. But that's the what a lot of people think, that if they eat more sugar and they have cancer, it'll make it worse faster. And that you should eat healthier to slow down your cancer. Now, it might be a myth that sugar will make a tumor grow, but I do believe that if you do find out you have cancer, I think going pretty extreme with a healthy diet is not a bad idea. Anytime that you have any kind of illness, eating better is definitely recommended. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
in general, even if you're not diagnosed with something, I would say eating healthy is important. I mean, I have beat that drum to death, right? But but yeah, for sure, if you have cancer, there are recommended diets that are supposed to help you. And I know of at least one person, her name's Chris Carr, and she's pretty popular. She has a website and she's got a lot of social media stuff. And she has battled, I believe, I want to say it's colon cancer. She has
Wow.
had cancer for a very long time, and she's had some medical remediation for it, but she has mostly kept herself going by eating a really healthy diet. And I mean, she looks fantastic. She feels great, and she has prolonged her life by taking certain steps to be more healthy. And so it definitely can't hurt to cut the sugar out if you for any reason, but especially if you have an illness.
Yeah, especially since obesity plays a role in
Mm-hmm.
cancer. And we know that, right? Another, well, I'm going to go through a few of them here. Carrying a phone in your bra can cause cancer. That is a myth. And you might be excited to know that, and all of this research about the myths came from the Breast Cancer Foundation, the National Breast Cancer Foundation. So we'll put a link to that in our notes. But the article that I read mentions that people might be pleased to know that brain and nervous system cancers have not changed in frequency because of cell phones. So everybody that says you need to talk on a speakerphone because if you put your phone by your head, it's going to cause brain cancer, that is not true. That's a myth. Another myth is that all breast cancers are the same. That's not true at all. There are many different types, and it's determined by the specific cells that are found. And each type of breast cancer has different features and considerations. And yeah, so keep that in mind.
Yeah. Wearing a bra with underwire is not going to cause you breast
I wouldn't
cancer.
have that issue because I find those so very uncomfortable.
Same. It will make you uncomfortable. It might
It'll give you
an
bruise.
injury.
I always felt like that. Underwire bras give me a bruise. I mean, it's just so uncomfortable. Who invented those things?
The ones we've just been talking about, there are plenty of reasons not to do that. Like, don't put your phone in your bra because it's gross. And I know we have been slighted with the pockets, but try not. Ugh. You ever clean your phone? Yuck. And as far as the talking on your speakerphone because you're afraid of cancer, if you're going to do that, do it in your house or your car. Not out at lunch, not in the doctor's office waiting room, don't. That's gross too. But yeah, no, underwire is not going to give you breast cancer. It's just going to make you really uncomfortable, maybe a bruise. And just get another one just because you have a lump.
Yeah.
We've already talked about that. It does not mean it's breast cancer. There's lots of other stuff it could be. And Tina, I did real quick pull up my information about breast density earlier, talking about that, just to touch back on that real quick. There's several things that can cause it. And a lot of the more denser tissue is from like milk ducts and things like that are structures that already exist in your breast, but the more they are the more inflammation and the more use they get and stuff, the more denser those are going to appear on a mammogram. So somebody like me who's nursed 4 kids, I'm going to have more stuff going on. And what that does when you go to get the mammogram is it looks darker on the image. So they just have to read your image differently.
Yeah.
And you have to be more careful. That's all that's what it means. And there's like 4 different levels of dense tissue. And there's 4 different kinds of ways that they can look at the breast. There's all different things. So you just have to make sure your doctor knows your history and all of that stuff, which is important anyway.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different causes for breast tissue. And like you were saying, if you're on hormones, those hormones, whether it's hormone replacement when you get older and if you're in perimenopause or whatever, and your doctor puts you on hormone replacement, or if you're doing HRT, if you're transgender, that's going to cause you to have some more breast tissue that's denser. So that's just something that the doctors have to keep an eye on. What's another myth that you found?
Oh, well, so this one, well, another one that was on the National Breast Cancer website was that people think that mammograms cause cancer. And I guess it's like, because when you go to the dentist's office, they cover you up when they do x-rays and stuff. And I guess that's where the myth comes from. But breast compression while getting a mammogram cannot cause cancer, and nor does it spread the cancer if you already have it. So don't let that keep you from getting exams because you're worried you're going to get it. And then the last one that I wanted to share was not on that website for the National Breast Cancer, but it was something that I heard on, and you and I both have heard this myth before. In fact, we've both succumbed to it in some ways, is that deodorants with aluminum can cause breast cancer. And so they said this was on Daily Blast the other day. They said the Dr. Coley on there, and I'll put a link to that in our show notes. But Dr. Coley said that that's a myth. While she said that while it's probably not a good thing to put aluminum-based products on your skin, it's not the cause of breast cancer. It is believed that when you use various kinds of lotions and things like that in the breast area, that there's a possibility that calcium deposits can result in things like that. So you may feel a lump because of that or whatever, but that's a myth. So the deodorant part of it, if it has aluminum in it, is not going to cause you to get breast cancer. However, I agree with Dr. Coley that it's probably not a good idea to put aluminum on your skin anyway, for various reasons.
And you talked about it a little bit before, but I wanted to mention again that when we were talking about risk, and you talked about men, and men can get breast cancer. So especially if they know of the gene, that's important for them to be extra cautious. But men, should kind of be mindful. You need to be mindful of your whole body. If you see any weird changes or anything doesn't look like it used to, it sure doesn't hurt to ask your doctor about it. But especially if you're concerned about it, you should definitely take note of it and mention it when you go for an exam with your doctor.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I will mention that we've talked about them briefly, but the websites that we got our research from were the Susan Komen Foundation website, the National Breast Cancer Foundation, and WebMD, and then also that Daily Blast Live episode with Dr. Coley where she debunks the cancer myths. So we'll share those links in our show notes, but the most important takeaway from me, Priscilla, is that we should all make sure we get our screenings according to what the doctor recommends. And if you want to donate to help with breast cancer research and you have the money, by all means do.
Yep. So get your gals checked and your guys.
Is that what guys call them?
I don't know. Well, no, that sounds.
I know that sounds weird. So it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Be aware and be careful.
So now that we've addressed our topic, Tina, do you have anything you might want us to think about over the next week or so, maybe some food for thought or sauce for thought.
Yeah. We've had the hot sauce, we've had the meat sauce. How about some sauce for thought? Yes,
Yeah.
I love it. So, my thought for sauce, something for you to think about, is that we have noticed, I think we, not just me, have noticed that there's kind of a combination of things. I know everybody recognizes that the world is in a bad place right now, lots of negativity and things on Facebook. And so, I just want to encourage everybody to be more positive in the things that you're posting on social media and the things that you're saying to other people. And I was sharing with Priscilla last week that I listened to a spiritual podcast, and I will add that link to the show notes for you guys. But it's about hearing from Jesus. And one of the things that the pastor in that podcast mentioned was the story of the leper who was healed by Jesus. And something struck me. This isn't anything she said, but it struck me. She was talking about how the fact that leprosy back then was believed to be something evil from Satan or some type of curse. And I started thinking about it and I said, isn't that the way that we look at certain groups of people in the world today? I mean, my oldest son was an addict and he passed away. And I always felt like he was considered a leper around a lot of people because people are afraid of addiction. They don't know how to address it. And it's the same with other people in the world right now, other groups of people, the Jewish people and the transgender community, for goodness sake. So many different groups of people are feeling this attack. And so I think that if we want to make up for that, we need to go the other extreme and avoid saying anything negative about any person or group of people, Taylor Swift included. Stop picking on Taylor. She's my girl. I'm not a big Taylor Swift music fan, but I love her because I've seen all the good she's done in the world. But at any rate, this is my thought. When we post on social media and when we share things, we should always do so with a positive note. And remember that somebody is going to read what you wrote that may not agree with you about things. So if you post something negative, it can be really hurtful to other people. And I found this great quote by this writer, Anthony Gucciardi. I hope I'm not butchering his name, but he said, I have a lot of respect for genuine people. They may not be perfect, but at least they're not pretending to be. And so be genuine. And if you have a bias, don't feel you have to share it though. But that's the best food for thought or sauce for thought that I can give you this week.
Amen.
Is to be genuine and be kind to everyone. That's all for this week, but make sure that you make yourself a priority.
And take care of you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to keep up on all the latest sauce. See you next time.